Story number 1.
A memory from my Year 3 school camp came back to me, and now I can't stop thinking about how weird it was. I live in a regional city in Australia. It's relatively big, but once you leave the centre of the city, it's pretty much all bushland and trees. I'm writing this in June 2025, but this happened at some point in my second decade of life. When I was in Year 3, 7 to 8 years old, my school took all the year on a school camp to a campground 45 minutes out of town. It was a one-night trip, and we were all super excited. After a long day of archery, basketball, tennis, and all the other things you do on camps, we had dinner and went to bed. I distinctly remember laughing and messing around with all my friends before we all fell asleep around 11 p.m. Now the next part I had forgotten for years, until only recently it came back up in my mind, and now it's the clearest part of my memory. I used to be terrified of the dark and used to wake up multiple times at night. This certain instance, I woke up in my cabin at around 2 a.m. I remember this as I had a watch that was very special to me, and for some reason, looking at it and checking the time comforted me in the dark. When I woke up, I felt like something was off. Not wrong, but off. I looked around my cabin and saw nothing of interest, but then I was struck with such an intense feeling to just look out of the window. It was right next to my bed. Our room was on the second level of this cabin complex, so when you looked out the window, you had to look down to see the ground directly below you. When looking out the window, I saw nothing, and just when I started to look away, something caught my eye. I could have sworn I saw something right below the window, almost out of sight if you were simply looking forward. I looked down and I saw someone, not the average person, more like a tweaker. He was tall, maybe 6'3", 6'4", and his skin looked like he had just fallen hard on cement. He was covered in scrapes and grazes, and his hair had been all buzzed off. He looked about 40, but I think he may have been mid-20s, based on his super skinny build. He wore a dirty black hoodie and black jeans that looked like motorbike pants. He also wore what looked like a mix between a fedora and a cowboy hat. The image I've attached is almost exactly the same, if it looked more like a human. When I looked down, his eyes caught mine instantly. He was staring into the window. He didn't move his head there when he saw me. No, he had been actively staring into that window before I was even there. He stared with such wide eyes, like he was straining all the muscles in his face to pop his eyes out as much as possible. The second we locked eyes, I ducked back down and hid under the covers. I wanted to scream and yell and tell my friends, but I was so scared that I couldn't even move. I waited under those covers for what felt like hours until I felt like I was safe. I slowly peeked out from the covers again and checked the window. He was still there. He had moved a bit to the right, but he was still there, staring intently at my window. I didn't even get to become fully level with the window before I ducked out of sight again and went back under the covers, whimpering. I'm not sure how, but I managed to fall asleep. When I woke up, it was light out, and all my friends were happily awaking after their sleep. I woke up and checked the window again, praying he was gone, and luckily he was. I told my friends about it that morning, and they all laughed at me for having a nightmare, and I think I believed it. I forgot about it for 10 years, but when it came back to me the other week, I realized that it couldn't have been a dream. Everything was so real. I have very weird dreams, never having one that actually makes sense. My dreams always flow so weirdly, so the absolute consistency is almost proof to me that this actually happened. Also, I specifically remember laying under my covers for ages, something that I doubt would happen in a dream. I've no idea who was outside my window or what he was doing. I just hope that he isn't continuing with what he was doing, because that look in his eyes told me that whatever he was doing there, he wasn't messing around. I don't know what I saw, but I just wish I had an answer.
Story number 2.
I almost got stabbed by a homeless woman. English is not my first language, so there may be spelling mistakes. I'm a 25-year-old girl, and this happened maybe 8 to 9 years ago, and I was 16 to 17 years old then. I'm writing these lines in June 2025. I'm from a small village, and I went to school in the nearest big city, which was about 40 kilometers away, around 24.85 miles. Because public transportation was so bad, just to get home I had to change buses twice, and if I missed the last transfer and my parents went home, I had no way to get home unless they came for me, or I had to walk 4 kilometers or 2.5 miles. I lived in a dormitory during the week in the city where I studied. I stayed in the city during the week and went home on Fridays, then back again on Sundays. I always got off the bus at the main station when I arrived in the city, around 2 p.m. My boyfriend, who came from another town, also studied in the city. He came by train. Every Sunday I waited for him at the station for about an hour and a half, and then we went to the dormitory together. That day was no different. I was waiting for him, sitting upstairs at the station in a spot where I could see the entire ground floor from above. I had my headphones in and on my phone, just sitting there. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a homeless woman wandering around. She sometimes stood still and looked around, but I didn't pay much attention. There are a lot of homeless people in that area. Time passed. I was still sitting, headphones on, phone in hand. Then I saw the homeless woman start walking in my direction. I still didn't think much of it. When she was about few feet away from me, I noticed she was talking to other people who were sitting nearby, probably asking for money. A few moments later, she started walking toward me again. I saw her, but I didn't lift my head. Then she stopped in front of me. That's when I looked up. She just stared at me. Her eyes looked like she was high on something, and she was slightly swaying. She was dirty, honestly disgusting to look at. Some green liquid was dripping from the corner of her mouth, and her face was dirty. She wore a thick coat, grey pants, black boots, even though it was spring, and had a black backpack. She had short brown hair, brown eyes, looked around 40, though she could have been younger. I saw her lips moving. She was talking to me. I took out my headphones and gave her my attention. I'm not a rude person, and I always try to speak kindly to people. But when I removed my headphones, she went silent, just stared at me. What? Could you say that again? I asked her. Then she spoke again, and I didn't understand a single word, just mumbling. She stared at me with those glassy eyes. I shook my head. Sorry, I can't understand what you're saying, I told her and looked at her. At this point, I felt my heart beat faster. I got scared. I didn't know what she wanted, and something about her made me really uncomfortable. She started mumbling again, and while she mumbled, she began searching for something in her coat pocket with her right hand. I looked down at her hand to see what she was doing or what she wanted from me. At this point, I thought maybe she needed help with something. I looked back up into her eyes and waited to see what was going to happen. Then I saw her pull her hand out of her coat, and I looked down at her hand again. She was still mumbling, and I saw a piece of glass in her hand. She slowly slid it up under her coat to her forearm, holding the sharp end in her palm. It was pretty big, sharp, probably around 15 centimeters or 6 inches. That's when I realized something was very wrong. My eyes widened. I was scared. I asked her one last time, a bit more irritated now. What do you want from me? I knew there were people around me. It was a train station in broad daylight, so I didn't think she would actually do anything. Well, suddenly she stepped toward me and pushed the glass toward me, toward my neck. I reacted immediately. I jumped up in time, pushed her away, and yelled at her, "What the fuck are you doing?" She started mumbling more angrily. I had no idea what she was saying. My whole body was shaking, and I was terrified. I grabbed my travel bag quickly, all while keeping my eyes on her. She was still mumbling angrily, holding a glass shard in front of her, staring at me. "Leave me alone! Go to hell!" I shouted at her again. And as I rushed off, I saw that everyone at the station was watching us. I ran outside the station and saw some police officers nearby. I felt relieved. I walked toward them, but I didn't say anything. I knew that if I told them, they'd probably just tell her to leave, and that would be it. So I just stayed close to them. A few moments later, I saw the woman come outside too. She was walking in my direction, angrily looking at me. I didn't see the glass in her hand anymore. I grabbed my bag and walked to a different part of the station. Courtyard where she couldn't see me. I was trembling, scared, and in shock. I never saw her again. A bit later, my boyfriend arrived, and I told him what happened. He was surprised and worried too. He told me never to wait for him at the station again, and I didn't. From that point on, I always waited for him at the dormitory. Even now, every time I go to that station, which is rare, I get anxious and stay alert. I still live in that city now, even after finishing school, and I'm still with my boyfriend. We live together. Just knowing what could have happened there if I hadn't reacted in time or if I just ignored her, it still scares me. So to the homeless woman who might not even be alive anymore, if you are, let's not meet again.
Story number 3.
A shirtless, drugged out stranger tried to break in while I was alone at home. Hi Reddit, I'm relating this to you. June 2025. This happened to me in August 2024, during the middle of a gloomy Melbourne winter. It still gives me chills to think about it. For context, I had just started a new job and was working from home while being trained over Microsoft Teams. My husband was at work about 45 kilometers away, and I was completely alone in our new house. We had only moved in a couple of months prior into a developing suburb. At that point, the street was practically deserted, just one neighbor beside me and another all the way at the end of the road. Everyone else, empty lots and half-built houses. Around 3 p.m., although still daytime, it was already dark due to the thick winter clouds. I was sitting in our theatre room, which faces the front of the house. The blinds were partially shut, not enough for full privacy, but enough that you'd need to look closely to see in. Out of nowhere, I hear a knock, not a doorbell, just knocking. That was odd. Door-to-door salespeople usually ring, and I wasn't expecting any parcels. I got this immediate uneasy feeling and checked our security camera. Standing there was a huge, shirtless man, clearly high or drunk, swaying, aggressive, and peering directly through the narrow glass panels on my front door. When I didn't respond, he started banging louder and louder and yelling for me to open up. The aggression was escalating fast.
Open up! Open up! Open up!
Thank God we had a security screen door installed. But even with that barrier, I was panicking. I was home alone, no one else was nearby, and help was not going to come quickly. I tried to keep calm, but then he wandered to a nearby construction site, grabbed a piece of wood, and began smashing it against my security door. That was it. I called the cops. They could hear the banging on the call and immediately told me to get into the master bedroom, lock that door, then get into the ensuite bathroom and lock too. That way, there'd be 2 locked doors between me and this guy in case he made it through inside.
Open up! Open up! Open up!
The next 20 minutes were the longest in my life. He didn't give up. He moved to the side gate and tried climbing over it, which leads directly to the back of my house. I've glass sliding doors back there, and it hit me. They'd be easy to break. I rushed to shut the roller shutters. As they were coming down, he saw them and lost it. He began pounding on those now, furious, completely unhinged. Then finally, siren. The police arrived. Saw his car parked all crooked in front of my house. Noticed the muddy footprints and immediately jumped the side gate. They caught him mid-rage at my back doors. He was detained, but because of local laws here, people under the influence have to be medically sobered up before arrest so that the cops aren't liable if anything happens while they're high. So they called an ambulance, took him away, and also towed his car. A cop returned to my door later to explain the situation. Apparently, this guy was completely out of his mind and had mistaken my house for a drug house. There was one all the way down the street that had some shady activity, and he thought mine was it. I still remember calling my neighbor during all this, telling her to not open the door no matter what, because she has 2 small kids, and I didn't want anyone else getting hurt. This whole experience left me shaken for weeks. I still can't express how grateful I am that my husband had insisted on installing roller shutters and reinforced security doors when we moved in. If we hadn't, I don't even want to think about it. So the coked out lunatic who tried to break into my house while I was alone. Let's not meet ever. Edit. I've added some pictures from our security cam below to confirm the validity of the story.